All right, so this is Sarah Wolf calling to order the remote meeting of the Manchester-Essex Regional School Committee tonight, October 4th. Welcome to everyone who's joining us and to 1623 Studios for recording the meeting and posting it for us. We will begin with public comment. I just want to take a moment to remind everyone that this is an opportunity for comment, not debate. As our policy states, a school committee meeting is a meeting of a government body at which members of the body deliberate over public business. We welcome the attendance of members of the school district community to view your school committee as it conducts its regular business meeting, but these meetings are not designed to be an opportunity for dialogue. Please know that while we will not be immediately engaging with your comments or answering questions, we are listening and paying attention to your concerns. During the meeting, we will be focusing on items that are listed on our posted agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please put your name and town in the chat. There's still nobody there, so I'm thinking nobody's going to do it. Okay. Nobody's in the chat. No public comment. Okay, so is there anybody on the phone who's planning to make a public comment? All right, then I think we can go ahead and close the chat.
All set.
All right, it says me first. Is Lucas here? Oh, is that LTR Lucas maybe? I was wondering if you wanted to have our student report first, but I'm not seeing our student.
I don't, and I know they just assembled the advisory and they were going to have a process for appointing someone, so I don't know if that has caused any confusion.
Okay, no problem. So we perhaps don't have a student report tonight. My report's really short. This is what I have. It's nice to have you with us virtually. I do miss being in person. That's not really part of the report. I'm just saying that. I hope you and your families are settling into the new school year. I know that things have been very busy around the schools and that our administrative team has been working really hard to manage the schools, to continue to manage the schools during a pandemic while also going about business as usual. I'm sure that all the parents listening tonight are looking forward to the open houses coming up this month. It's always great to meet the teachers and see the classrooms. As we move into the fall, I hope that everyone will continue to exercise patience and respect and to support our teachers and administrators and the work they put in every day to make this a great year for the kids. And now, without further ado, we can move on to our consent agenda, which includes warrants numbers 1011, 1058, and 1059, as well as the minutes from September 21st. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Burke.
Thank you. A second?
Second, Kate.
Thanks, Kate. Is there any discussion on the warrants or the minutes from last time? Okay, no, then I will take a roll call vote. Eric?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Matt?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Is Chris on the line? Chris, I don't see Chris's name. He might be late. And Ken?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes. Teresa's not here tonight, and it looks like Chris is not here yet, although I think he's planning to be here soon. All right, we're ready for subcommittee reports. Does facilities have a report, or do we have anything to report about the buildings?
I can just share the buildings memorial is continuing to move along on schedule. We had our regular weekly meeting this morning just to go over timetables. So there's nothing out of the ordinary. So on time, on budget, resolving some last minute issues to get all of our certifications for open. And we'll be looking at, it was discussed this morning, probably mid-November for the ribbon cutting ceremony. I think the key to the ribbon cutting ceremony is being able to get people onto the site and being able to enjoy the landscape. So that's just what we're waiting to have finish up. Unless I'm missing something, Avi, I think that's where we're at.
No, I think that hits it. It's so far there's really not a lot of since we opened the building, there's not a lot of surprises, and they're just going through the steps on the exterior. That's going, according to plan so far.
And we have the Essex Playground on the agenda formally for later on, so we can tackle that when it comes up. And it was just great. The after-school program is up and running, and the kids were just enjoying the playground and the facilities. And it's just wonderful to see the kids having fun and enjoying all of the wonderful features of the new building. So a real success for the whole community there.
Yeah, yay. I stopped by the Essex Playground yesterday too, just to check it out, and the kids were having a good time.
Yep.
It's good. Okay, so thank you. Finance Committee, I think Matt's going to report out on the collaborative group.
Yeah, so we met as a collaborative group, I think it was 2 Fridays ago, with Pam, some of the Board of Selectmen and the town administrators. Main ones was with the budget season, we kind of want to make sure we start that early with the kind of the collaboration between all the different groups to make sure that people are kind of aware of what the schools are thinking and kind of what's coming up for the next year, so that the discussions can be had kind of well in advance prior to the budget needing to be approved. Other than that, I think the other big ticket item was starting to really think about when it makes sense to get Essex Elementary potentially on the agenda for a new construction, the early brainstorming in terms of timelines and things like that. But always good to have that on the radar now that Manchester Elementary is completed. Other than that, I know Avi provided an update. No other big kind of surprises, I think, from the school on the school end for this fiscal year. Pam, am I missing anything? I think those were some of the key highlights.
Those are the highlights. The only thing that I had on my notes to mention to the group is we did have September 28th scheduled for an education meeting with Finance and Board of Selectmen in Essex. That was the outcome of some summer work we had done with the collaboration group, and just knowing that they had new members on board, just kind of taking them through, take an opportunity to take them through what the budget process looks like. We were all teed up and ready to go for the 28th, but they're experiencing a little bit more turnover on the committee, and I think some of their members have some pretty hefty work obligations right now, so the scheduling got a little messed up, and we are looking to reschedule that within the next month or so. So more to come on that.
Awesome.
Pam, do we know, I was going to say, do we have a current list of who's on the FinCom on both in Manchester and Essex, or is that still in flux probably?
I think they're starting to settle in Essex, and I don't recall that there was much change for Manchester. I would probably fail the quiz on the spot, but we can get a list out to everybody just so you have it for reference.
Thank you. Not urgent, more curiosity.
The reps to the budget collaboration group for the two towns are, it's Jeff Bobber-Turner for the Board of Selectmen, Maury Creighton continuing for FinCom, and of course Greg participates. And then on the Essex side, Brendan is Greg's counterpart. Ben Buttrick is repping for the FinCom, and I think, is it Mr. Bradford is repping for Board of Selectmen?
Guy.
Or is Ruth going to be repping for Board of Selectmen?
Thank you.
They've
All right.
gone back and forth, so one of the two of them will be the rep for the Board of Selectmen.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Matt. I don't believe the policy committee met.
Nope,
We did
no
not.
meeting for us.
Okay.
Nope, but there should be a note in your inbox about a time to meet, unless that didn't exit my outbox. So if you don't have it, just send me the signal and I will get it back out to you. But we do have one piece of business that we need to address, and it's just coming up with a response to the Essex Playground Committee around a naming process. So we just need to vet it to make sure it's consistent with our policy. And I think the other question, the subcommittee will want to have a recommendation, question to answer, and then a recommendation to school committee on is whether or not we'd like to ask Memorial to follow the same recommendation that we're getting from Essex. So I spoke to Sarah today, and our goal is to have that wrapped up for everyone by our second meeting in October.
I did get that. Thanks, Pam.
Okay. We have not met as a negotiating group, although we do always continue to keep those lines of communication open with our union leaders. And we are hoping to, in addition to, we met quite a bit last year as we navigated through all of the COVID situations, but we're hoping to enter our contract negotiation cycle soon. So we're looking forward to working with them on that. And that's all I got for committee reports, Pam, so I can turn it over to you.
You're muted.
Okay, too many screens open. I was just saying, continuing with the theme for tonight, I too have a brief report. Happy to say we are really just settling back into some typical routines, and these are positive routines. You know, just the flow of the year. Our workshop Wednesdays are starting to emerge again. We started to nail down the strategic plans. School councils are meeting. Student activities groups are fully underway. In the after-school hours, athletics is at full tilt. Our teams are doing well. There's life in the stands. So when I say we're busy, we're just busy living the life of a school, and it's really a wonderful feeling. So still lots of positive energy on campus, and getting back to some of our traditional events for families as well. Open house, as Sarah mentioned, is taking place throughout October. Every Thursday in October is designated to a different school. You can see it's Essex on the 7th, kicking us off, then the high school on the 14th, Memorial on the 21st, and middle school on the 28th. Another piece we're getting back into our schedule is October is the Cyber Awareness Month, and typically we have every 2 years Dr. Englander from the Mass Aggression Reduction Center, an expert in cyberbullying, cyber anti-bullying, will be speaking to us via Zoom, but providing us with our parent workshop, with her theme this year being the post-pandemic and getting kids to balance in-person life and on-screen life. So I am thrilled just in the first few days that it's been in people's inboxes. My last check, we have over 55 people enrolled to participate, and that probably will, at this rate, will likely break our record for attendance at an event like this. So another silver lining to COVID is I think the virtual format makes it a lot easier for parents to access the information that we're trying to share. You can be at home with the kids and still tune in and get some really valuable information. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Englander. She's done incredible work over the years. It started just originally with her anti-bullying program, and then she expanded into the cyber world. And I know she's been an asset to us as a consult when issues arise, bringing her team in to work with our students directly and what she's been able to offer to parents. So that's October 13th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. We'll be sending out the invitation a few more times before the event, and it just asks you to RSVP so we can get the link out to you so you can participate. More good stuff. We officially started our coaching regime with Michael Eatman from Culture 7. We met as a leadership team on last Thursday for about a 3.5 to 4 hour session with the theme of building capacity for change. So this is some initial anti-bias work and culture development work. We start with developing self-awareness so that we are able to increase our capacity to support others. And my big walk away is that we're ready. We are in a very good position to enter this work, given the work that we've been doing over the years with SEL and Ruler. A big piece of understanding how to increase our capacity to be an empathetic and welcoming environment is having a good knowledge base of emotional intelligence. And that is the basis work in Ruler and in the SEL work that we've done. So we built a very good structure from which to launch from to achieve our goals in this area. So that's really exciting and actually incredibly inspiring. We are working on a schedule to build to our January release day to have our staff have some initial training, and there will be within our journey some time in which Michael will come to the committee and also work with the committee to start to branch out into our community work. So he's very good at assisting with pacing, and we're just going to take this step by step to achieve our outcomes. And this is just an FYI, we know the MCAS is out, schools are sorting and stuffing, and we anticipate student score records will be in the mail by end of the week. And at our next meeting, you'll hear from the middle and high school principals to give you kind of a state of the schools based on the data, and the elementary principals will be here on the 2nd. I can go right to COVID now, unless it's all in the same slide deck, so it might just be the easy way to go. I can't, there we go. And not a ton here to report either. It's been very quiet in COVID. Masks are just, I think we've achieved what we wanted to. We said we wanted to have a fairly normal year, just wearing masks and being conscious of distancing from one another. And I can't, you know, the kids have been fantastic. The teachers have been fantastic in implementing it. And it really just is something we do now as part of our day. The numbers are very low. We had no new cases reported to us last week. We are on a Wednesday to Wednesday reporting cycle. So that's a little bit, you know, it cuts over 2 weeks. And we've had a total of 8 cases since the beginning of the year. And no evidence of spread and no need to activate our testing program, although it's provisioned and available if we need it. So kudos to everybody for staying on top of the mitigation efforts. I think we're in good shape, and from what I've been reading, numbers are starting to decline from where they were at the beginning of the year. We all know every month is a new story, so knock on wood for now, and we're prepared to continue what we're doing as long as it's necessary. You probably heard since our last meeting, DESE had announced that they're extending the mandate on masks until 11/1. The message came out somewhat confused because in this, you know, they stated 11/1 mask mandate extension, but there's going to be an off-ramp for secondary schools that have 80% or better, or a locally determined benchmark for a vaccination rate, at which time you could apply for a waiver for the mask mandate from the state. I think the long and the short of it is it's under consideration. At this point, I would say our recommendation is to continue as is until there is a remedy for the 6th grade students. Our understanding of the rule at this point is that you need to have 80% of the occupants of a building. So it can't just be the middle school, it can't just be the high school. It's everybody who lives in that building would need to hit the 80% benchmark. We could certainly gather that information in those cards if we so chose, but I think we have talked a little bit about kind of the clerical component of doing that. I think for us, it lands with 2 things of concern. Clerical issues aside, once we have the information, we still have 2 things. We have an entire class of students that isn't yet eligible to get the vaccine. So we have about 80 to 100 students there who will be unvaccinated until further notice. And then once we do know who's vaccinated, I think we need to get our heads around on how you manage the environment of those who qualify for not wearing masks versus those who are required now to wear masks, and what the enforcement looks like on that. DESE has said that they would give us some helpful documents on maybe thinking about how to navigate that issue. And I would like to have some conversation with some colleagues who are thinking about taking it on. My concern is that you've got kids who are unvaccinated and now forced to wear masks, identifying them as unvaccinated, and what does that dynamic look like, and how does appropriate management of that look? So I know we're all thinking about it, we just don't have a solution yet. So unless, and this is a question for the committee, if you'd like us to speed up our process of determination there, we certainly can. I'm just looking for some guidance and feedback from you on how you feel about pursuing the off-ramp.
Anybody have thoughts on that for Pam?
Pam, I guess I support I was going to say, until we've got somewhere where sixth graders have access to vaccination, just ballpark there, 15 to 16%, just sixth grades, one school of the middle high school building potentially. Never mind, I don't know how vaccinated everybody else is. I don't know if we'd hit that 80% benchmark. And again, it's really would like to make sure that everybody has a chance for a vaccine before we say, hey, all the older kids have, before we make the masks optional. So that's just my thoughts on it. So I support kind of what you described right now.
Anybody else?
Ken, I think we're in a really good spot right now, and I'd like to see us stay there. I know that there are other districts that are struggling with their numbers, and I'm super comfortable with where we are. And I think we're doing everything that we need to do to stay there.
Yeah. I know we're all, by this time of the week, the tops of my ears are sore, and I'm sure everybody else is, but I was going to say the numbers are staying low, and we're moving forward and keeping kids in class. So
Does the town of Manchester still have a mask mandate in place?
I believe so, though I haven't checked the status.
Yeah. I'm sure we're all wondering what the transition to, the colder weather, more indoor activities, and the rise of flu season is going to do to the whole mix of things. Again, I'm with Kate. I am really pleased with where we are. I'm very comfortable with where we are. It doesn't seem to be, it's an annoyance, but there's plenty of opportunities for mask breaks to get outside, to get into, for an adult to get into a private space where they can get some relief. I'd like to see us get through a few more weeks and see what the trend is going to do, get a little bit more guidance and make a measured decision. Because right now we're achieving our goal. We said the goal in all of what we were doing was to get in school, stay in school, and minimize the amount of quarantine and absences. And we're having success, again, knock on wood, with that in this month.
Yeah, awesome. Does anybody else want to share any thoughts on that? Okay, I think we can move on. We're good.
Great. So I think that was the first item on the agenda in continued business. Then we had ESSER, and I just happen to have a slide on that as well. If we're comfortable moving on to that, we'll give you, Avi and I will tag team and give you a little bit of an update on what this is. So throughout last year, there were several federal and state grants that filtered down to the school level to help us defray COVID costs. And they were the CARES Act, and then ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, all part of the American Rescue Plan. Long story short, we had to file beginning of October for ESSER 3. And with ESSER 3, there were a couple of different components. One of being collecting some inputs from stakeholders as to how we should spend the dollars. The great news is that how we were thinking about spending the dollars tracked almost identical to how the feedback from families came in. So we're all kind of on the same page as to what we need to do to address COVID. Just a quick look, it's not the easiest to read chart, but essentially academic support, mental health, and social emotional learning were the top three, with ed tech and PPE coming in behind it. And Avi's going to take you through how we set up the grant, but what we tried to do was invest in helping remediate this year while defraying costs of PPE and other investments that we had to make last year just to keep buildings open. So again, it's great news that we're tracking we're all on the same page with what the issues were and what we're trying to solve with the monies that we get. The good news is the money is usable through 9/24, so it's a multi-year grant. The not so great news is you'll hear from other districts that they are getting a lot more money than we are. As a reminder, our allocation is based on Title I, which is based on free and reduced. So our share of it is significantly smaller than some of our neighbors, but we're trying to put it to good use to cover COVID costs, achieve our goals, and achieve our goals in a way that track with our strategic initiatives and objectives. So Avi, do you want to take us through how you set up?
Sure. And Pam, I sent a slide. I was hoping you might be able to put it up on the screen that just runs through some of like an updated look at the funding that we've been receiving and how it gets allocated. I think if you've been to some of the earlier presentations, we've talked about the fact that we knew that the CARES and COVID allocations would not really be sufficient to cover the investments that we've needed to make to open the doors. There's a little bit of good news and update on that front. It's not official and final, but whereas in the past we had, everyone may remember, we had sent about a little over $200,000 to FEMA prior to the start of the calendar year, and that got completely rejected when the prior administration had very narrow FEMA allowances for costs that would be approved related to school reopening. They basically said they didn't want to touch school reopening. I think perhaps the fear was that those numbers would just be way too big. But subsequently, in working with the towns, one thing you may remember is that most towns receive CARES funding as well. And because that was all happening very quickly and in real time as the federal funding picture was coming into light and things were kind of the federal government was building its own plane while flying it. There was really no provision for how that would affect regional school districts, which are not, town-based school departments. So if you're in a community where the school department is part of the town, those CARES Act dollars were very commonly used for school reopening costs that maybe FEMA wouldn't have covered. In our case, we had to, we didn't get any allocation for that, and nor did any regional school district. However, as part of the collaboration process, we've been having ongoing conversations with both communities about what they might have left over, and knowing that school costs are one of the largest costs that would come to eventually pass through the towns, but anything that's not covered hits our reserves. So the town of Essex in particular has been working with the Department of Revenue on that. And so they're currently thinking that they would be able to support potentially a large, if not total portion of that FEMA submission that we had, which would be great because that could, go all the way up to 200,000. So if you look at this chart on the left-hand side in the black are all the CARES grants, and you can see the ones that are confirmed. ESSER 1, RLT is the Remote Learning Technology Grant, which was a summer 2020 grant to help make sure that there was students could have access to technology as remote learning was unfolding. CVRF is the coronavirus school reopening grant. ESSER 2, you can see down there, that was the second wave. You can see that was much bigger at $206,000. And then there's the coronavirus prevention grant. That was a state grant where they basically handed about $45,000 to MERSD with very few strings attached, which was helpful, but not large. And moving down, you see ESSER 3. And then those are all the committed funds. And that's, so you can see that number is about $1.1 million. Whereas in the column just to the right are the potential items. There's the potential for the Essex Town CARES Act money to absorb potentially up to that full FEMA reimbursement. And you can see that's the rejected, quote unquote, old FEMA. And you may remember hearing that after the new administration came in, they completely revamped the FEMA guidelines. And so we might be able to submit potentially another $70,000 that we're working on right now. More things are potentially eligible and the reimbursement rate is higher. But it's really too early to say how that will unfold. We're hoping to get that submitted only because we've been waiting to sort out all the other grant pieces and we haven't submitted that. That's going to be submitted in a couple of weeks. So you can see the total amount of potential funding there totals the 1.4, just under $1.4 million. Moving over to the right, you can see some of the major buckets of where that money has gone. And it just, in order to fit it on a chart, we've kind of simplified some things so I can unpack some of the column headings. But you can see we've got facilities, items, for school reopening, and a lot of that was really slated towards the FEMA area. I'll come back to food service in a second. That's part of answer 3. Instructional technology is one.
Avi, you're breaking up a little bit. Hey, Avi, we can't hear you anymore. Not really.
Just a little window. How about now?
Yeah,
Nope.
that's better. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I
That's
always
okay.
hit a little window there. So instructional technology, we've talked about a ton, and there's all sorts of technology that we've discussed at school committee, from one-to-one devices, as well as revamping the technology that teachers have, redoing what's in a classroom, as well as things like online platforms such as Zoom, which we never had, and we put a license in the hand of all staff, as well as administrative support that we had through the partnership with Access, for extra outsourced FTE that we used to get us through a temporary phase where we wanted to first create a parent help desk. We've never had to do that before. That took a lot of time, as well as helping staff, both while we were remote and especially when we came back into the building, with a lot of extra support and just supporting probably twice as many devices for students. So the Access partnership has been a big part of how we've used the CARES funding. You probably also recall that we had some transition in our tech department, with 2 of our main network support people moving on to other positions. And so really that the Access contract helped us to stabilize the ship. As you know, we have 2 awesome new hires in our department now, between Gary Jones, who's our new network manager, who's probably had the fastest onboarding of anybody ever. He's been here about 6 weeks. He's doing a great job, as well as Ian Mankini, who comes to us from higher ed and has really been a great shot in the arm for our database activity. So that's a little bit about technology, and then staffing. I know Pam and I have previewed in the past a lot of the staffing needs that came, especially in 2020, 2021, as we dealt with outages and maybe some health requests that were coming and needing additional staffing as we spaced out students into additional classrooms and spaces and getting monitors. And so that really did come in more or less as we expected, at about 400,000 there. So you can see that the total numbers here is about just 1.45 million, north still of the funding that we're seeing, but with the potential to make up some of that FEMA money through a partnership with the town of Essex, whereas the gap before was in the $200,000 to $400,000 range. Right now it's a lot smaller. These numbers aren't finalized, but you can see we're tracking a lot more closely with a potentially smaller amount. It says 30,000 potentially hitting reserves, but remember the FEMA amounts of that 70,000 is still yet to be determined, as is the finalization of the Essex CARES Act partnership. So I would say that a $30,000 to $300,000 range is still appropriate. I think probably by the time December hits, these numbers should be pretty close to finalized. So that's a pretty big overview. I did want to touch to the original question on ESSER 3. You can see those line items there. And part of what we talked about at school committee before was that as these new forward-looking funds were coming out, we still had a big deficit of prior spending that we had to cover. So one classic example that we talked about previously is the food service department, where we continue to offer funds. There is that program where free meals were being funded by the Department of Education for all students, regardless of what would be who would be otherwise eligible on an income-based test in prior years, and that's great. That covers your gross margin. It doesn't cover your labor and your staffing to staff the buildings, and we did need to have a full presence because as we first there was during the completely remote phase, we didn't have a full presence, but there was a lot of activity for distribution of meals that food service was helping us with. As we came back into the building, we did increase the presence because we were having more lunch blocks and with fewer students in them. So that is the cost that we thought would be over and above the typical amount that we have contributed to cover the fringe, for those who remember tracking our budget. So that 100,000 is a portion of what's in the ESSER 3 grant. We have additional technology costs that have yet to be funded. But it also includes in that technology area some of the things that are technology based that will help students with working on potential learning loss issues. So working with Angela Bick, we've been looking at technology based assessment tools that we can use as we continue to revamp how assessment is done internally for keeping track of where kids are, who might be at risk, who might be falling behind. And so these ESSER 3 dollars will help us very much in a forward-looking ability to continue to keep an eye on learning loss. So that's an exciting piece of that component. And then the staffing piece is a lot of it is catch up for amounts that weren't funded with grants. There is some forward-looking component, which includes a little bit of work on the social emotional side with some work to help continue to roll out some of our social emotional programming, but also some student mental health supports with funding of an adjustment counselor position that was previously funded through budgetary funds, but because it aligns with the survey data and with the ESSER 3 intention, that's something that we're going to, for this year alone, we will cover through the ESSER 3 grant because it allows us to align the spending with community input and with the intent of the grant. Thereafter, it will come back and revert to the budget. So that is a very long introduction to the finances, but I think so much has changed since we last gave this update back in the spring that I thought it would be helpful to not only talk about ESSER 3, but also give you a sense for how the total funding picture is shaping up. And we don't expect there to be more federal grants coming to us at this point. There hasn't really been any discussion of that, but it does remain to be seen. The real open pieces are still what we can do with the upcoming submission for the last remaining items in the town partnership. So sorry for such a long explanation, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Avi. Does anybody have questions for Avi?
Avi, I have a question. When we're looking at that potential money from the Essex Town CARES Act, did we previously receive money from the Manchester Town CARES Act?
Sorry, I'm unmuting. We have not received from Manchester, but there have been some other partnerships that we've talked about. I believe that they have a lot more of their funding already allocated. But there was a kind of tangential item that came up that you may remember talking about, which was related to some of our technology rollout that isn't coming through the CARES Act, but is a potential way for us to partner with the town of Manchester and receive funding, which is our expansion of our fiber line. As you may remember, we are rolling out fiber from the middle school, high school to Essex Elementary, and we're getting 40% of that funded through E-rate, the federal program, not a CARES program, with 60% being the district share. That was approved by school committee to be funded through reserves. But as part of these collaborative budget discussions where we've talked about what we might be doing on the Essex side, knowing that the fiber line would have a big benefit for the town of Manchester as well, because they could hop on our line to connect their loop through to Essex. and thereby have the ability to connect with some of the regional services that are flowing over technology, such as backup support that's happening on a regionalized basis. I know there's conversations in town of Manchester about what might happen with dispatch. There's also conversations in the future about regional software solutions. So the town of Manchester has been offering an amount that's not yet defined, but could be a significant portion of contribution towards the district share of that fiber line. So the timing of that really aligned with when we were going through the CARES Act funding. And it seemed like, given that they have a higher percentage of their CARES money being allocated to local initiatives, they were hoping to use the fiber line project as a way to pitch in as well, knowing that we were incurring a lot of costs. So I'm pretty excited about that because we are expecting to pay for that fiber share entirely on our own. And it looks like that will be a really nice offset, which also comes out of reserves.
Is my memory serving correct? Was it around $140,000 contribution from Manchester on the fiber line?
Not quite that high. The district share, I believe, was 120, and I think the Manchester share hasn't been finalized, but I thought it was approaching right around 100.
Okay.
But I don't know that we really finalized that number, but that was a ballpark.
Okay.
And if I'm getting that wrong, I'll have to, I will make sure that Greg can correct me on that.
Thanks, Avi. I have another question about the ESSCR3 funds. So those are based on Title I numbers, which I know vary from school to school in our district. And I know that we have varying amounts of learning loss too. So if our learning loss was targeted as one of the number one priorities from stakeholders, are we targeting those funds to the schools with the higher numbers of Title I students and higher levels of learning loss? Are we able to do that?
At this point, the funds that we've put in towards learning loss are really on the assessment piece. And so I think the theory is that, first it would be rolled out. I believe the assessment piece is K through, for this particular intervention is K through 8. Yep. And then, and I think we would wait to see what that data show. And then there are additional supports that we have included that come with the assessment tools for instructional supports that can be basically targeted interventions and instructional materials that teachers can use to basically hit specific gaps that are identified. And so I think those funds certainly could be used to go wherever the problems are identified. And, if they do turn up more in one area, I'm sure we will do what we can to make sure that that need is addressed in that way. But I think the first step is to really see what the assessment data shows. That's my layperson understanding, and Pam probably is a little more familiar with the instructional piece of that, in case I'm getting anything wrong.
Yeah, I think the tricky piece is we can target funds to the schools based on percentage designation. However, the percentage and the heads are two different things. So a 16% head count on 200 students and a 14% head count on 500 students, you still have, you have a larger group in one location than the other. So I think what we're trying to do is come up at the district level with solutions that benefit the whole and allow us to identify kids in need. It's also very hard because of Title I, the basis for allocation is heads and percentage of free and reduced, but the funds don't necessarily flow directly to any one particular student. So to answer your question, Kate, yes, the funds are going to go to identifying students in need, but we're still on the hook as the district for the majority of the funds to remediate in the end. 20% of this is basically we surveyed to determine how to split up the 20%. So we're really looking at $80,000 to $100,000 of the entire grant going to support this. And social emotional, the adjustment counselor at the high school was one of the key funding areas to support SEL and mental health. So yes, it's a long answer to your question. The monies follow where the needs are.
Thanks, Pam. Are we using a different assessment measure beyond our Ames Web benchmark screenings and the MCAS scores that we already have? What are we using? What are we using the money to fund?
Yeah, we're transitioning to a new version of Ames Web. Well, not a new version. We're going electronic with Ames Web for this year as a bridge to we believe it will be iReady in the fall of 22, with the middle school leading the charge this winter and beginning their transition at that point. And these funds will be used to support that. Very quick aside, K-5 has had Ames Web for many years, and it's been kind of the traditional paper and pencil version of it. We have yet to put in place a data gathering tool at the middle school. The middle school is ready to go. That's why they're moved up on the transition timeline a bit. And after some long discussions with a steering group, the decision to use Ames Web for one more year was a way to kind of help bridge the gap of coming back into school, the first real year with wonders, and try to keep one thing not changing,
Right.
and then go for the full change in the fall.
Does anybody else have questions for Avi or Pam about the finances of the COVID grants? I mean, I remember sitting here at the beginning of COVID and like being in a full panic because we knew that we were going to be spending all this money and we didn't know if anything was going to come. So the fact that it's all coming in, and Avi, you're doing such a good job sorting it out. It's pretty amazing.
The accounting has been a little overwhelming, I will not lie. And I think one of the challenging things is the spending really happened first while we knew the grants were coming, but they were not sorted out. And just because we had to open, and I really have to say, I credit Pam and the leadership team for just figuring out what we needed to do in the summer of 2020. It was just amazing to see. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, these numbers are adding up. We previewed them. So it is a little bit of a relief that we're getting closer to break even, but just remember that confirmed column is 1.1 million. So,
Right.
We're not out of the woods yet, but we're getting a better and better pathway.
Awesome. Under the instructional technology, I know a lot of that is on the new online assessment pieces. Is there other instructional technology that we invested in that we're going to be able to keep using like well beyond COVID? Is there some silver lining there?
There is quite a bit of that. So for example, I'll just give you one example. If you have a classroom that's set up to do remote presentations using iPad technology that could broadcast out to kids who are home back in the time when they were, well, those iPads are now part of our carts, that we can use for one-to-one technology as an example. And there has been a lot of infrastructure investments, but a lot of it also, just talking about the ESSER 3 as an example, that a lot of that's the technology, like the assessment that we're talking about. So that's where those assessment pieces show up, because they're going to be instructional technology. We were careful to not put too many student devices through this one-time money, because we knew the lifespan of those is so short that we knew we were going to be needing to replace them. And we already had a lot of them that we had put out. We were pretty close to one-to-one just prior to COVID. And then this really kind of pushed us over the edge. So those items, I think we've talked about before, they've been financed. And so we will have follow-on costs for those in the fiscal 22 current year budget and 23 budget as we continue to pay for those. So that we will see the technology for instructional hardware and software for the recurring items going up. There's no doubt about it. So I'm not sure if that's a financial silver lining, but I would say programmatically, this definitely helped us to accelerate where we were moving already anyway, which is 1-to-1. And I think that it's been great to see how instruction has really benefited from that. And so I think we're really poised. We've got the money lined up for the budget. We are going to have to reallocate from other areas, which will be a little challenging for the fiscal 23 budget as we start to get that ready to cover some of those costs. They are not dramatic because they're spread over multiple years, but they're going to be noticeable.
Okay.
And just the big picture, we didn't let go anything we had in place for last year because we didn't know what the year would bring. So what we're hoping to do is systematically go through and see what do we use now in a typical year, what can we let go, and what do we want to invest in long term.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other school committee questions for Avi on this slide? All right. Thanks, Avi. This is awesome. That was really helpful. You're muted, Pam.
We jumped over Essex Playground, and I see that Jason is on the call and Avi's microphone is active. Should we just transition into that? Will that work?
Yeah.
I'm gonna, Jason has been the mastermind on this project. He's done a phenomenal job, and I'm glad people have been able to see the playground. So I'm gonna really let him take us through where we're at, what the updates are, and I'm be here too to answer any questions that come up. But Jason, if you're there, maybe you can just let us know what the latest is.
Hey everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
There it is. How's everyone doing?
Good. How are you, Jason?
Good, excellent. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Yeah, as kind of Avi mentioned, I know Sarah mentioned it earlier. A lot of people have driven by the playground, been on the playground, had their kids on the playground. It's been open since the start of school. We have passed all inspections, all certifications. So that is great news. I've heard a lot of great things from not only the kids, the teachers, Jennifer. So that's really, exciting that, once again, we have a playground at Essex. And it's just, it's a tremendous amount of effort by, the playground group and everyone involved, to finally see kids playing on it. I was talking to, a couple members of the playground group, like August 1st. We're now at that point, which is great. As you have seen, if you've driven by, all of the quote unquote, phase one or the compound side is complete. It's not a finished project yet. There's still a lot of kind of work to be done, especially in the kind of the surrounding areas. The playground group has put together a design, as you guys may recall, that includes a couple walking paths, a trail around the playground to kind of give it kind of an overall kind of a theme. As well as some grass, putting seed down, and putting some plantings. That's still in the works. The goal at this point is, well, my goal is by kind of late fall to, get kind of the slope of the back of the playground kind of in a little better shape for winter. I'd like to get the trail in place as well as the pathways. And then I think the plan as of now is to kind of wait until spring to do kind of some of the trees, and the rest of kind of the beautifications. I think at this point it may be a little too late to kind of do some plantings. But again, I think for, once we hit winter, I'd at least like to get the back slope kind of in a better situated, as well as that trail and two pathways kind of established, put some crushed stone there. And I think it would really kind of look a lot nicer come spring. And then at that point, we can look at, donations for some trees or some shrubs. Get some picnic tables in there, some little better, cans, and get some volunteers out there to spread some seed, do some loam, and really kind of again make it a finished product. So that's kind of the latest. Happy to answer any questions, but again, it is being used, and which is a great sight to see.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jason. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a comment. Jason, my kids are in 2nd and 4th grade at Essex Elementary, and they have been loving the playground. They're so excited that it's open. They're so excited that they have some place to climb and swing and slide at recess. And we actually went to a community birthday party there outside of school hours where the whole grade was invited, and it was just so fun to see so many kids enjoying it. It was awesome. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, no, I actually took my 5th grader, 2nd grader, and kindergartner there today as well. My wife said, "You have an hour, so go kill some time." I'm like, I know the perfect place to go, and so they loved it as well. And again, that's kind of what it's all about. So thanks for the comments.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I love seeing the kids playing on it, and I'm also really excited that we can do some fun planting in the spring, and I think it will all come together and be amazing. So
Absolutely.
yeah. All right. Any other questions for Jason? Okay. So thanks so much, Jason, for coming in.
No problem at all.
The playground. Moving on to strategic plan. We're almost ready to wrap up the strategic plan.
Yes, this is just one more look. I don't think there's any substantive change to the mission, vision, core values, vision of the graduates, and theory of action from last time, except to say we have removed the comma in where was it, in the equity core value, which
is it alpha?
It never left, but it's gone now. And we're going to do, once we're through kind of the review phase, I think the group chatted a bit, and we think we'd like to remove the numbering from the priorities, because the numbers make it seem like there's an order to them, and there really isn't. And if the preference is to keep the numbers, I think we would want to move the currently designated number 3 into the 1 slot. But I think the consensus was the best way to go is to just remove the numbers and have them all stand as a unit. So if anyone has any strong feelings.
They're like the 3 legs of a milking stool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there any, I know some some questions came up about the language and wordiness of the mission and maybe some of the other core values. So I don't know if is there interest in a general discussion, or?
Well, I will start. I have a proposal for the mission statement.
Okay.
I would be happier with it if it was phrased as a mission statement. So if it said, like, if you use the word mission in the statement, like, the mission of the Manchester-Essex Regional School District is to provide a high-quality, comprehensive, student-centered educational experience. I know Teresa's not here tonight, but she felt, having looked at this a lot, as many of us have. So I'm like, I really want to do that first part. But then Teresa was wondering, her thing was that it's just, she thought maybe it's redundant. Like, we wanted to get, I feel like so many people worked on this and everybody wanted to get all the words in there. So the question is, are there now too many words in there? Does a high quality, comprehensive, student-centered educational experience cover it? Or do we also need to say that it supports the student's academic, social, and emotional development? Or is that implied by the high quality, comprehensive, student-centered educational experience? So does anybody else feel like it's a little wordy, or do we feel like we need all the words to be in there? I guess is the question.
For what it's worth, I think the vision could take care of the second half of that sentence, because they are essentially saying the same thing.
Yes.
I don't think anything I've heard discussed or suggestions made over the past week or so changes the concept or content or the intent of what we were going to do. So I'm very open to any wordsmithing that people feel it needs. Does anybody object to Sarah's recommendation? Okay. So why don't we put it through another edit and bring it back? As long as if we come away tonight directionally solid, then I can hand it off to the principals to start doing some work at the school council level. I know they're kind of itching to get going. Okay. Was there anything else on the overview? And moving to, this is where the most change came into play.
I love the changes that you guys made here.
That was a really good team effort. And I was saying it to Sarah earlier, having Angela Bick was able to kind of sit in and just listen to the conversation, and not having been part of all of the wordsmithing in the different iterations, was able to just very clearly suggest in response to what was being said some great language. So we owe a lot to her, and we spend a lot of time. So Jake kind of submitted his ideas for this through public comment, but he's also on the strategic planning group that was meeting in the spring. So we really got to talk through his thoughts on how it was so broad and it wasn't really consistent the way it was set up. So this is the product of those discussions. And I don't know if anyone has any concerns with how it was changed or recommendations for additional updates. And I think a good part of the conversation we had was the first document that we were looking at kind of sets the 10-year outlook, like where we want to be at the end of the process. And this is going to be a set of 3 sets of 3-year chunks to get there. So it doesn't all have to be done within the first 3 years.
I just felt like these objectives seemed a lot more concrete and easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that a principal or a teacher looking at them could really like chew on them a little bit more easily than the other ones that we had.
So other than the work here, the other conversation piece that came up was around number 4 of the, what's the header? Not celebrate and nurture. Oh, it got chopped off. Ensure funding for a stable multi-year budget and capital improvement plans through collaboration with town and community partners. One of our objectives was to review personnel efficiencies to improve or adjust delivery of program. So I know Avi's on the line. Searching for efficiencies has just been a mode of operation that we've had for many, many years now. And it's a way to show that when we want to change something or expand something or introduce a new program, we're trying to message that we understand our responsibility to look within first for different ways of doing things and ensuring that we're running a tight ship. So we're not always expanding, just straight up expanding the pie. And we haven't really expanded the pie to take on new programming in 10 years. Teresa brought up a good point, and she said, should we move away from the language of efficiency seeking and frame it more in terms of our needs?
Yeah, you know what? I think, Pam, that you got here and you saw that a lot of efficiencies needed to be made, and so that's always been your MO. But I feel like you've made all the efficiencies now, because we've done nothing but cut people since I've been on school committee. So I would be good with taking away the efficiencies and replacing it with needs. I think that was a really good suggestion.
Any input on that?
I appreciate that perspective, Sarah. As someone who's new here, it's good to know the history.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
head into budget season, we will pull out our efficiencies document that just kind of shows how we went through and reordered things and restructured things as we went along where we could. And I think Sarah's right. We have been trying to say over the past few years, we don't have a lot of those items left to go to. We've contracted what we can contract. We've consolidated what we can. I think seeking an efficiency when enrollment's declining and there's a cut to be made or an efficiency to be made through attrition, we're not shy to take it. We think it's our responsibility to do so. But conversely, I think what Teresa's saying, and Caroline Well used to be an advocate of this too, we also need to tell people what we need, because we're always going to be stuck in the efficiency bucket and we'll never be able to invest and grow. So I appreciated Teresa raising this, and I'm really comfortable changing it to needs, because I think it leaves it open to both performing our responsibility of finding creative ways to fund things, but also asking when we need greater assistance.
Yeah.
Okay then. All right, we'll go ahead and make these changes. Do we feel like we're there and ready to, would you be comfortable if I said to the principals we're directionally solid?
Yes.
There may be some edits and some language tweaks along the way, but we're going to start filling in now timelines and ask you to start thinking about what these look like at the school level.
I think it was really important, Pam, that when we did have the administration staff online, they were pretty much engaged to it and part of the discussion. And I didn't hear much in the way of objection and a lot of engagement around, oh yeah, let's go through and really think about how each of these with their teams apply to their school in particular. So I definitely felt comfortable hearing their input and their response to this, because there were definitely concerns about, oh my gosh, this is so much to take on. And it was like, no, this is direction. And now the individual teams kind of would say, oh, here's what we're doing, and be able to think about what they have underway and their state of maturity on each of these relative to that and their directions. So it was a good transition, felt like.
The feedback on it has been really positive. I think I mentioned this last time. I shared it with the staff on opening day, kind of directionally, this is where we're going. We're going to solidify in the fall. And it resonates with, I think it's just, it's a natural extension of the work we've been doing and a good projection of where we want to go. I think it's syncing up, which is reassuring, because the intent was to have it reflect what people were telling us they were looking for in their schools.
I know everybody worked really hard on this, so thank you.
No, this is exciting. We really enjoyed this work. All right.
Remember when we thought we were going to start that work and then we couldn't start that work because of the pandemic, and it was really awful, and then we did it anyway?
I'm glad we started last spring. I think it was good to have this on the table coming into the year to focus us forward. It's working out well, and we'll be nice and tied up hopefully by the end of the year. And next year, hopefully COVID isn't even part of our conversation, and it's really all just setting our sights on implementing the plan work that's taking place this year. So everything happens as it should sometimes.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you want to talk about? That was all the bullet points. Is that it? That's really all we have tonight. Do we have any school committee comment?
This might be the shortest school committee meeting. Well, we have had some short ones before town meeting in my time.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty amazing. I haven't, my inbox has not been as full as it was for most of last year. I think people are just enjoying having their kids in school and doing normal kids in school kind of things.
Thank you, by the way, Sarah, for handling the correspondence. It's always a little lesson for me every time to just see how you respond appropriately and positively to just such a range of topics and thoughts.
I do my best. But thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have a school committee comment? No? Motion to adjourn?
So moved, Warnock.
Second?
Second.
Aaron?
Oh my gosh, they're fighting for second. Okay. Eric, are you a yes?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
See you in 2
Thanks.
weeks.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.